Hello, hello. Welcome to Wednesday night. 20th? Yeah, May the 20th. Let me double check that. It is May the 20th, 2020. Sylph, Dominic, Hawkins coming to you live from Reigning Spirit Dojo, Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, Earth. And it's session 7. Whoa. Session 7 of our Wednesday night meditation and energy work, breathwork videos. So I hope that the last week has been good. I think I start off the same way in all of these, don't I? I hope that your family are well. I hope that you're well. I hope that you're finding a solid way with the middle of yourself at this time. And I don't know where it is for you in your part of the world, but for those of you who are here with us in Melbourne, in Victoria, it's starting to get cold. It's starting to get wintry. So slowly, we're needing to just, retreat's not quite the right word, but we consolidate our energy inside. So the meditation for tonight, we're going to get into a whole bunch of organ breathwork. We talked about this back in week 1 and week 2 of the videos, and we're going to touch on a little bit of that tonight. So hopefully, if you've been following these right up to now, like I said, this is session 7, I think. I hope so. That's what I wrote on the description. So you've had basically 2 months to practice with us every Wednesday night, build up and practice over the week. Even if it's just 5 minutes at the end of your day, you lie in bed and you take 5 or 10 minutes and you just go through some of the activities. You go through some of the practices that we've been doing on the Wednesdays, some of the sensation building and development, and then some of the oscillation, sensation observation, from the left hand to the right hand, from the hands to the feet, and the arms to the legs, etc. So, without further ado, we're going to keep flying forward at light speed, and we're going to now take our attention to, we're going to start off with just our usual 5-piece sensation observation: breathing, listening, smelling, tasting, feeling, tactile, and sight and seeing as just a precursor. So I recommend doing that. Who knows, it might take you just one breath in each of those, it might take you 5 or 10 minutes, but I recommend using that activity at the start of your meditation sessions, of your planned meditation sessions, to really help you just immediately align your thoughts with the context that you are in currently, just so that you're kind of on ball. And then from there, it's easier to start in sense observation and observation of the senses in other ways, other than just very macro. You want to get into micro areas of experience. It's one thing to be able to experience, so just the weight of your body on certain parts of your leg. So I'm sitting in Seiza and I can experience the pressure of where my body meets the ground. It's one thing to experience that. It's kind of like it's certainly a valid experience, but it's very macro. It's very chunky, It's the Duplo blocks version of that. A whole other thing to take that down to the hairs on the back of your arm and just the subtle sensations of change that occur in the hair follicles with when air passes, or a temperature change, for example. So when there's a draft in the room and there's a very specific stream of cool air that passes, you can feel almost, you can map the stream of that as it passes through specific hair, and we're back. So, working towards that. Now, long-term goals. On the Friday nights, talking about philosophy and theory. So the Friday night is where I've been presenting more, and those videos are all on YouTube, as well as these, if you're watching from the future. The Friday night videos, the philosophy talks, that's where I get into some of the more, the English language, not goals, but a transcendental sense of self. It's transpersonal, yeah, it's beyond the person, beyond personal, beyond the persona. And meditation can be a vehicle towards, even that's wrong. Meditation can be an experience of the transpersonal. That's well better said. Well better said? You know what I'm talking about. So in these forms, by actually sort of, like I said before, aligning our thinking ability, the brilliance of the human mind, aligning that with the context of the surrounding world, the smells that are really here, the sounds that are actually going on, etc. What we can do is you can usually find that there starts, without you even having to ask the question, there starts to become more and more obviously this blurring between the edge of what you consider is you, I, and the edge of these sensational experiences, so that it becomes very difficult to separate the sound from the ear that is hearing the sound. It becomes very difficult to separate the experience of, say, the temperature change on your arm of cool air from the actual nerves and the sensation of the arm and the mechanics of the arm sensation itself. So more and more the lines between that like cut me off from the world, they blur, and that's a good thing, because what it usually does is it brings with it this opportunity for us as individuals to be able to get a glimpse, touch in from our mental perspective, a glimpse into this idea that perhaps the identity that has been created around this flesh and this form and this idea, this name, this job, this is who I am, this is where I live, these are my family members, these are what I like, what I don't like, etc. We get a chance to glimpse that in context to this natural cycle and rhythm, just of the experience, that which we call the experience of being alive. And what we usually find is that the ideas we form are very useful, but they're only ideas. There's nothing substantial about them. The only substance they carry is into the actions of the people, into how they play out those actions. So on the Fridays, I've talked about how ideologies overall are just dangerous. It doesn't matter what they are. Not dangerous because they necessarily lead to anything. They're dangerous because they are illusory. So anything that is illusory will ultimately have to be destroyed at some point in time in relationship to that which we consider to be true. But when I say dangerous, I don't even necessarily mean dangerous for other people. Ideologies can be dangerous for the individual because there's no longer a seeking for kind of, I know that this always bites me in the back, but objective observation of experience. That's probably not even possible. Yeah, all experience is subjective. But I really do think that one of the opportunities we have is from a subjective place, we're reaching for objective experience. So I hope that makes sense to you at home. That from a known, it's like, okay, I start off knowing that I'm at fault. I know that this does not have the perspective to observe the infinite. That's just the way that is. Anything sub-infinite can't possibly have the perspective that the hierarchical tier above it has. So it's like, well, I can't do that, but I can certainly reach in that direction. Better than just reaching in the opposite direction. So in that ability, we find that there are certain archetypal experiences that the human has, certain that come about in that way. It doesn't have to be through meditation, whatever. You could be a plumber. You could be absolutely enamored with plumbing, like just beyond any plumber that's ever plumbed. And actually, now that I'm saying that, it's funny because I bet there are, and this is going to sound really funny, there must be mystical plumbers. There must be mystical labourers. There have to be. I don't know whether or not they've been written about. Say like the Christian church, there's a lot of writing about the Christian mystics. Well, not a lot of writing. There's some writing about the Christian mystics. And it's like they're seen as like a separate group of the Christian members themselves. And that's the same. You get, so that's about the esoteric and the exoteric. So the esoteric, the things that are, and it means teachings, but like in context, the esoteric is something that is knowledge that is kept for an intimate group, so a small number, a small intimate section. The exoteric is something that's designed for the general public. So all possible things, like I'm just trying to think, anything you can put your mind to that is like an industrial area of human creation, a career, an occupation path, an industry of any kind, farming, smelting, martial arts, yoga, engineering, cafe baristering, plumbing, mountain hiking. There's there's the general knowledge, there's the knowledge that is presented to the infinite public, and then there is the hidden teachings, the hidden knowledge, the secret knowledge, the knowledge that is intended for the use of core small groups, and the purposes of that are usually, regardless of what it is related to, it's music. Usually, its purpose is to take those individuals who are in that core group and propel them to a high perspective of them in the midst of their occupation, in the midst of the infinite cosmos. And this, I think it's funny to talk about it in this way, but I really wonder if anyone knows of any book that's like the sacred writings of the mystic electrician, or the esoterics, like the secret inner teachings of the mystic mountain hikers. There must be every single one of these areas, because there are people in all areas of life who, through the process of that path, that experience, they experience that they find a sense of grand perspective. Let's put it like that. And I put it in a non-spiritual language. Even to say like some sense of what modern society coins as enlightenment. There's realization of the self in relationship to the whole, and then the infinitely impossible distinction to draw where self ends and whole starts. And in that, usually there's a lot of peace for the human being. There's a lot of, thank God. Like, there's a lot of relief that the individual both is not responsible for the infinite cycles of the universe and is, paradoxically, infinitely entwined in the happenings of the cosmos. And that those two together, just historically, from a mystical perspective, they seem to provide very good, stable bases for the human being to be able to take responsibility for that which they are able to and relieve responsibility for that which they are not. And the distinction is not so black and white for any individual, but it's like it's a methodology through which the individuals can apply that piece by piece by piece. So usually those things lead to a sense of just relief. And I think from relief then more enduring sense of peace in relationship to ideologies about the importance of self or the righteousness of my way. So it's like if we were to take that in a martial art context, we could say that there's all this public work. There's the website, modern, there's website, there's discussions, there's dialogue about what it is that happens in martial arts. There's videos, there's YouTube videos, there's written work, there's curriculum, little joke there. And all of that is out in the public domain. It's all there. So that's all exoteric. It's all part of the exoteric offerings. Anyone can walk in off the street and can pick up the book and do their best to read through the novel that is the curriculum. Or they can watch videos and they can attempt to emulate that from their own current level of understanding. So that's just all there. The esoteric components of that, the secret teachings, the inner group teachings, they're not prized, if that makes sense. Maybe it's because of the word secret as a poor translation. Inner would probably be better. There's nothing secretive about them. They're not teachings they're not even methods or ideas that are hidden from plain view. Usually, they're things all the secrets are hiding in plain sight. Yeah, just put that out there. In all contexts, the reason that they're inner teaching is because their relevance doesn't have any relationship, that they themselves don't have any relevant relationship to the context of the exoteric teachings until a certain point in the development of the individual, when suddenly the individual is willing or ready or wanting something. They want to reach beyond that which is publicly offered, and they want to reach into the quiet, like who's the man behind the curtain kind of thing. And then these discussions, dialogues, even this form of meditation that we're doing on these Wednesday nights is a type of this. I mean, you can present that publicly, and I'm sure a lot of people will have a lot of they'll be able to sleep better at night. It'll be very, very modern, Yeah, like, as in, what I mean is you'll be able to be outcome driven. You'll be able to take clients in your meditations and say, well, in 6 weeks from now, you should be able to sleep 50% better than you've been sleeping before. You should be able to report back to me at least a 30% improvement in your ability to experience ease when found in the middle of difficult circumstances, blah, 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 blah. So on a public level, that's all true. But what happens when you want to get beyond that? Like, what if you want to get beyond this kind of like very Descartes-esque, very skeletal, this equals that, do this happens, do that happens, it's all laid out and it's all there. When you reach the edge of where it just kind of falls into your lap and you actually have to reach out beyond, and then if you don't reach out, you're just one of the people who never reached out, and that's all right, there's billions of them. So you get to the point where it's like you want more, and at that exact moment that you want more, whatever it is, whether it's like you're plumbing and you want, I don't know why, I'm not a plumber, I don't know why I'm so interested in mystical plumbing, but you want to reach out beyond the things that you've been taught about plumbing, and you want to reach into certain form, I don't know, soldering your copper joins as an expression of beauty. I can think of one of my uncles who's a bricklayer, and a wonderful bricklayer, and he's probably, I don't want to offend him, he's probably in his 60s, or he can't be in his 70s. Maybe he's almost 70, actually. And he's a phenomenal bricklayer. The work that he does, I've seen around the place. You travel up and down the coast to see his work. And there's sections where, like, you know, brick arches and these beautiful brick pieces that are really obviously far more than just practical utility. He could have just built something that's very, very out of the box, but there was something where I'm just using as an example, and I'm obviously, it's full of conceit because I'm not him, I'm just making supposition. I assume he wanted to express something more in his work there. And so that leap where I assume you go from, you know, run-of-the-mill stonemason or run-of-the-mill bricklayer into phenomenal bricklayer who's making stuff out of the same material. It's still bricks and mortar, but there's something that's just where people stand back and they're just in awe, because there's something that's reflective, something that is universal, something that's archetypal to the human, that's being reflected in the work. And that's like, you could almost say they're part of the esoteric study of bricklaying. But potentially there isn't a book, or there aren't people who are giving discourses on the mystical bricklaying. I'd love if anyone can find out if that is a thing. Please let me know. I'd love it. I don't know why. So this is in every particular facet. And yoga has this, you know, like yoga's got this presentation after a certain amount of time. Once you've kind of embodied the practical utilitarianism of yoga, you know, you've got your six-pack and you're feeling whatever and the sense of clarity, and you're very flexible and you're like, yeah, well, this is cool, but is it really just a personal fitness form? Or is there something else? And at that moment you reach beyond what you're being presented, and you reach into the veil of the questions that are there. It's almost like life meets you halfway, presents half the work, and then you actually have to ask for the rest. And it's there, it's all there, but it's not there in a way that you can understand, because it makes sense. We can only understand things that we're experiencing or hearing or seeing or reading from the limit of our own current perspective. So if I'm trapped in a particular, and let's just face it, we're all trapped in some particular ideology. If I'm trapped in a particular state of thinking or a particular narrative, which means that I can only hear the negative parts of self-reflection. I don't know, just grabbing something out of the blue. So anytime that someone speaks to me, maybe they say 8 or 9 compliments, and they say one sort of criticism, and that criticism is what I hear. I hear the words of the compliments, but I don't even register them as patterns of principles or concepts. They're just words. Wonderful, amazing, you do this thing. Rubbish, and you're like, oh, rubbish at the thing. Oh, yes, well, because that's the narrative I have going on. Until the narrative changes, I'm not going to get any new information, not because information is not there, but because I just simply can't interpret the information as useful, so it just gets thrown out. So these forms, this like difference between exoteric and esoteric, they are, in many ways, it's like it's almost like just a way of quantifying that experience, so that there are things, exoteric things that are presented to the public, that are the face of all things. And then they are made up of a structure which is internal. They're made up, like the skeleton is esoteric. It's internal knowledge. And we've obviously, in modern science, modern medicine, we've obviously taken the understanding of the human skeleton into a public domain. But what I mean is, like, if I consider my reflection of myself, of this body, I don't see my skeleton. That's not something that's clearly presented, but it's intrinsically there, or else none of this is going to be happening. But it's not something that's there from my initial observation. I don't look at it and go, yes, yoga, great. It's like, I don't look at my body and immediately experience all of the intricate detail, the mechanics and the anatomy and the physiology and the sinew, the tissue, the bone, that's not all immediately apparent to me. Either I've been taught that from someone else's observation, or I've read books, or it's been indoctrinated into me that this is the way things are. But my personal experience isn't that. This is what my personal experience is. There's this kind of, what colour is that? Pinky skin tone coloured flesh. And I can experience that there's density changes, like there are things that are hard there. But go back 1,000 years ago, I don't necessarily, maybe I've never seen a dead body. I don't necessarily have any idea. I can't even conceptualize what this is, what that actually is, let alone sort of fly through in my imagination. So you could say that the knowledge of self on an internal level is esoteric knowledge, and the presentation of self, the persona on the outside level, is the exoteric presentation. It's the exoteric knowledge. Now, other people, when you interact with humans, other people, ironically, glimpse your internal world probably faster than we do. One of my favourite, Alain de Botton says in one of his lectures, modern lectures, he says that within about 5 or 10 minutes, strangers probably know more about you than you do in 40 years. Just because they're looking at you they've got a comparative context. When I look at me, the comparative context is me. And so it makes it very hard to learn more about me, because I already fulfill, it's like everything that I am is normal. It's that old problem. They say, if your hearing is excellent, then you can't hear your own ears. And just stop for a minute and see if you can hear your own ears. So if you can hear your own sense organ, then you have got ringing in your ears, or tinnitus, or something, or there's something there. You shouldn't be able to hear your own ears. Like, the microphone doesn't record itself as such, yeah? It's like its interest is external. The candle flame can only illuminate other things. It can never illuminate itself. Only in the reflection of others can it discover its true form. Classic. Take that from 2,000 years ago. So one of the reasons that meditation comes about, one of the purposes of this, is an activity. It's a methodology. It's an idea. It's almost like a scientific approach to saying, is there something more beyond my current experience? If hypothetically there is, as if that's like saying, is there something other than just the flesh? Well, hypothetically, yes, but I have to investigate further, but I've got my hypothesis. Then could this be an opportunity? Could this be an activity or a method or a pathway to answering those questions? Could meditation in this form, could sense observation meditation be a vehicle for coming up with answers to my question, testing my hypothesis that if I say, is there something more? The hypothesis is there's something more, yeah, to my experience. And that could be on a practical level. That could be like, is there more that I could hear? Oh, yes. There's a lot more that I could hear. And then if you really want to go all out in a meditative, where meditation meets philosophy and social, not even social, say sociology, but probably more psychology from a personal development perspective, the question could then be, how do I then hear more? If I've hypothesized that there's more to hear, and I experiment and I discover there is more to hear, how do I now increase my experience of the more that I want to hear? How do I make that a more permanent thing? How do I increase my information experience? And then the beauty of something like meditation is so simple. It is a method again for that same process. It's not only the microscope through which you test your original hypothesis, but then it's the vehicle of activity and practice that you use to further develop the apparatus to be able to further have those experiences. And it's so simple. It doesn't require anything. You don't have to go buy anything. You don't have to own. It's not like it's only available to specific people in Venezuela. It's like, it's just a thing. If you have the ability to use your mind, to direct your mind towards objects of thought, then you have the ability to experience human meditation, and that's it. Problem solved. If you don't have the ability to direct your mind, to direct your thoughts onto specifics, well, then you're probably oblivious to the question, is there more anyway? And so maybe the purpose of meditation is pointless to you. So in this idea, it's not like, what am I trying to get at? A lot of meditation has been drawn up as very mystical. And what I'm trying to get across is that I don't think that the process, the practice of meditation in itself is mystical in any way. It's like, it would be as mystical as lifting your arm and putting it back down. That's just a function of the body. This is just meditation as an experience, is just a function of the mind, of the human mind. So, and possibly an animal mind, but I can only talk for myself, yeah? So that's just the way that is. It's just something we can do. We've invented language because we can create sounds, and then we can create specific sounds and make shapes and patterns out of the sounds. So it's like, oh, well, that's just a function. That's not special. I mean, yeah, maybe it's awesome, but that's just a function of the anatomy. It's a function of the physiology. And so too, meditation, the opportunity, is a function of the physiology. That's where you get back to some of the old Buddhist sayings where they say, the blessing of a human life. Like, oh, that's cool. We have the opportunity to direct thought towards anything you want. And you look around at our entire human civilization. Our human civilization it's a presentation of the ability to direct thought. For better or worse, people create things, some of them are useful, some of them aren't. But on a broad perspective, it's an incredible demonstration of the ability for the human being to apply mental focus to an outcome, build a building, and then all of the intricate parts, form a conceptual ideology and then go to war. And it's not great, but it's an amazing demonstration of the ability of the mind, of the human mind, to be able to think. I mean, maybe in terms of an ideology, more of the mind is devoted to thinking about in imagination than it is the feedback of physical experience, the smells, the taste, the touch, the sounds. And then it gets kind of lost because we talk about balance. Well, the interaction with the physical experience of being human is where the satisfactions of the human physical experience lies. And then conversely, there are things that the physical experience can't penetrate satisfactorily, and those are realms of human imagination. So the two are very important. But what's that from the prophet Khalil Gibran? He says, work. It's asked about work. It says, you work such that you will maintain pace, with the seasons and the cycles of life. So that it's the very act of getting out in the world and using the senses, and you've got this physical body and you're going to do something with it, and you're talking, you're laughing, and you feel the sun and it's raining, and you're having all of this experience. Can you find the difference between you as the experiencer and the changing seasons? Like, you're moving along with them, like on one ocean. And then you don't feel like you're isolated from the universe. So you get out and you work. And that's where we get all our old, especially European cultural adages, where we talk about, get out in the fields and plough the fields, and the fields will give to you the wheat that they give to anyone who comes. Or the oceans will provide the fish to anyone who throws a line in of any, like, it doesn't matter. You just go out and you just put yourself out there, and the world gives back to you. But there's something really important for humans about using the thing that we've been given. And it's not just the material physicality, but it's the senses as well. And then beyond that, it's the mind. And part of what makes something like Shakyamuni Buddha's work so interesting is that really at the base of what he did, he just asked a question. You could almost phrase it as, and I'm sure I'll catch up with him 100 years and we'll hear about this, but you could almost phrase it as, what can the mind really do? Like way beyond anything that I currently think. What is the limit of potential of thought, of thinking? And then just go from there. And you say, well, in order to answer that question, we need a vehicle. We need a test. I can't just ask the question, which is better, up or down, and then not have any way of testing that and then come up with an answer. And that's obviously an arbitrary question. So then the development of something like meditation, which wasn't Buddhism. Meditation existed long before that, but it was coined it was used in this very specific way, in this form of vipassana, to ask a question and to just observe the answer. And then that just continued. 2,500 years later, we're still doing the same thing. I don't know if we really have any more answers. But boy, the method has been as powerful in that time as it has ever since. When we want to get beyond meditation. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by meditation is this specific practice of using the human experience to pose questions and receive answers. I'd probably coin meditation as that's what I'd say it is, from my perspective. Whether you are seeking answers intellectually or academically or experientially, then that's all downstream from there. But initially, you start with the things that are available to you immediately, like the flesh. And then I have to start peering into, if I've discovered that there's something there, there's something hard. I feel softness and I feel hardness. Well, what is that? That's a valid question. And I think one of the problems in modern society is that as a society as a whole, we've made those kinds of questions, which I think are fundamentally important questions. We've made those questions like embarrassing to ask. So, no, don't walk out in the street and ask the question. Don't go up to someone at the cafe and ask, why is this soft? Because everyone will just think you're an idiot. Or they'll give you some very scientific answer. They'll give you some answer about the specifics of physiology there for the jaw mechanism. And you're like, well, that's one answer, but that doesn't really answer the question. Because the question could be more like, what is softness? Those aren't stupid questions. Those are questions that no one really has answers to. And because I don't think anyone in our society has ever answered those questions, the threat and the sense of I suppose total just naivety of our culture means that we've removed those, we've eradicated those questions as far and wide as possible. And when people come and ask them these seemingly innocuous questions, well, they get treated like they're an idiot, or they get treated like, don't ask me such a I'm thinking about nuclear physics, and you come up and you ask me what is soft, don't be such an idiot. People get put down in this sense. And then all they do is they move through their life pretending to have answered those questions. No one ever answers them. And then they become the people who grow up, age in the generations, turn back to someone else who comes up saying, what is soft? And they say, it's such a stupid question. Why would you ask such a stupid thing? Come on, get on with reality. But really, these are very important, very, very important, getting very philosophical, very, very important questions to ask not for the practical answer that they will provide, but for the skill in asking questions and exploring through the ability that you have as a human being to find answers to the questions. I think that's not only the basis of science, but it's the basis of personal growth and development. So we're going to do a little practice of the 5 sense organs now. Just our usual thing. We do this, we'll do this quite quickly. We do this every week. And then we're going to penetrate the internal form. We're going to explore some organ sensation through breathing. So, breathing in through your nose. Just adjust that. In through your nose, down into your belly. And out through your mouth. Tongue sits on the roof of your mouth, behind the top 2 front teeth. And continue to breathe in and out. And I want you to now just have your eyes softly opened or closed. Take your attention to the sounds that you can hear in the room around you as you breathe. In and out. Now, what can you hear far away from you? Another breath. Now taking your attention to what you can smell. Breathing in. Breathing out through the mouth. In through the nose, what can you smell? The most detailed subtlety of smell. Out through the mouth. One more breath. Out through the mouth. Now moving on to the sensation of taste. What can you taste? Breathing in and holding the breath for 2 or 3 seconds. Tasting and then breathing out. Breathing in, holding the breath for 2 or 3 seconds. Tasting and then breathing out. So breathing in. Holding, tasting, explore the taste sensation. Breathing out. Breathing in. Tasting for a few seconds. Breathing out. One more breath. Breathing in. Fill the lungs. Tasting. Breathing out. Moving on to the sensation of tactile sensation of the body weight, where the pressure of the body weight meets the ground. Breathing in, just observing that sensation physically. Well, nervously. Second breath. Observing increasing subtlety, increasing detail in the sense of physical sensation. Third breath. Right, and moving the attention onto the sight, the visual acuity. What can you see? Eyes open or closed? If they're closed, just soften the colours behind the eyelids, or the shapes or the visions. If they're open, just softly the blurs of colours and geometry, form, the peripheral vision. Breathing in and out, 3 breaths, just softening the vision. What can you see on a broad perspective? Breathing in and out. All right, and just resting them. I don't know how you find that. Every time that I do that vision exercise with my eyes open, it's almost as if that my experience becomes a fisheye lens. My perspective, my peripheral vision kind of twists a bit. And I'm so fascinated. I'm going to do some more observation of that. So I'm like, oh, is that just me implanting a thought there? Or is that really, is that actually the curvature of the eye? Interesting. Okay, so let's move on. really, really quickly, because I'm assuming that you're well up to speed on this now, we're going to just go through physical observation experience of the entire left hand. So I'm just going to start. You can start at any finger, you can start at any point, it doesn't matter. The goal is just going to be over, like, let's do 5 or 6 breaths, whatever, 20 seconds or something, 30 seconds. We're just going to be experiencing physical sensation all over the left hand. So if you can get to the point where you get that awesome sense of this flame of the hand, some of you who were in my classes a few months ago who had that experience, that thing which comes from like almost like heightened detail of experience, nervous system experience. It feels like your hand's on fire, in a good way. We're going to get as close to that as you can over these 5 or 6 breaths. So left hand, just building up the experience of the entire left hand. Off we go. First breath. Second breath. Third breath. Fourth breath. Fifth breath. Last breath. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing to the right hand. 6 breaths. Off we go. First breath. All right. So hopefully you're able to progress at least some part of the way towards that experience, especially if you've been building up the last couple of weeks. So now we're going to take that experience that we've just applied to the hands, and we're going to take that attention internal. We're going to start off with something really obvious. We're going to start with the breath. So the breath is just the most, if it had a volume, it would be the loudest of the experiences in the constant cycle, of the human experience. So I want you to observe now, not necessarily the sound of the breath or only the physical sensation of the expansion of the diaphragm, but I want you to just take your mental attention to the breath itself. Do your best to penetrate your thinking, your imagination, inside the lung, inside the inner workings of the physiology, the contraction and expansion of the diaphragm, and the lung filling as if it's like you can get almost like a sense of the vacuous space of this object and some of the material that it might be made out of. Like, you really take your mind there. So we're going to just take 5 or 6 breaths. Have your eyes softly closed, and I want you to really observe breathing from the inside of your body. I know that's a strange comment to make, but do your best. So off we go, breathing in and out. And we'll do 5 more breaths. If you're struggling with this, start by considering the inside of your throat and then move down from there. Another full breath. Okay, now continue a big breath in and then hold your breath. Inward breath. And now hold and look for your heartbeat. And hold your breath until you consistently experience some rhythm of your heartbeat. Unless you're going to pass out, in which case breathe out and breathe back in and do it again. Okay, so hopefully all of you, just having to assume that you're moving at a certain rate, hopefully all of you are able to have that experience. When you breathe in but you cease the repetition, the cycle of the breath, then that cycle's paused. That's no volume to that experience. Your subtle experience falls to now the next loudest observation, which should be your heart rate, your heartbeat pulsing. And it might start off as just a very vague sensation. You can get so good at this, you can really hone in the feeling of the tissue in the chest, like the actual, it feels like there's something pounding in your chest at a resting heart rate. Not when you've gone for a run for 2 hours uphill. So we're going to take that. Now, if in the next bit you struggle to just hone in on the heart rate itself, go back to that little activity where you take a full breath and hold your breath. Use that as a quick, handball over in your observation sense to the heart rate, the heartbeat. What I want you to be able to do is get really good at this, though, is to be able to hone in on the experience of the heart beating, the sensational experience of that while still breathing. Your meditations are going to be very short-lived if every time that you want to experience something other than breath, you have to hold your breath, because you'll probably just pass out. So it's there if you need it, but I prefer if you could actually build it up with the breath in the background. Take 5 breaths, take your mind and observe your heartbeat. Now you could start anywhere on the body. You can start at the thumbs, the pulsing of the thumbs. If you're sitting on a certain portion of your legs, like in Seiza, you might feel that behind the knees or the ankles, but you're going to have to draw that back up to the chest cavity at some point. So 5 breaths, off we go, observing as much as you can, observing your heartbeat from the inside of your body. It'll be easier to catch a glimpse on the outward breath and the rests between breaths. And once you get that glimpse of your heartbeat, I want you to just softly scan through different body experiences you're having now and find out where else the pulse of your heartbeat, the blood flow, is really obvious. You might be surprised. One more breath. And then just softly letting that go. So, thumbs up on the video if you were able to experience your heartbeat pulsing from your observation internally. And hopefully, if you were able to find that experience at first, it naturally progressed out into other areas of the body that became heightened in your experience of them. Things that maybe you overlooked before. So when I focus on my heartbeat sensation, I can very quickly begin feeling the experience of pulsing in my thumbs on both hands, and all through the back of my neck and the back of my head. So it feels like if I really sit and I really use my meditation to observe heartbeat for 20 minutes, half hour, I end up with the experience, it feels like someone is shaking my head back and forward violently. This kind of pulsing in the back of my head. Hopefully I'm not dying, but that's the sensation that it feels like. I mean, it doesn't matter, I'm going to die anyway eventually, but that's the sensation that it feels like. And a few times out of interest, it's gotten so incredibly over the top, I actually feel like I must be doing this. And then I would open my eyes and realize, if I'm looking at a mirror or something, that I'm actually completely still, but I can still have the sensation of my head pounding. And it's incredible. It's incredible just how difficult it is to draw a distinction between the internal and the external sensation experience for the mind. The imagination that I can draw up, not even imagination, the actual feeling, yeah, we are all dying, the actual feeling, the actual physical experience, I feel like I'm being thrown back and forward. It's only when I orient myself visually in context that I realize that's not the case. And we'll leave the meditation there for tonight, and I'll segue that was an awesome segue, directly into the philosophy of that. It's easy to see through this process how neuroses can begin. That if I'm able to, if I genuinely believe that my physical form is being thrown back and forward violently, because that is the experience that I'm having internally as I'm just focusing on that pulsing rhythm, that blood flow, then until I actually orient myself with the context around me, that is the truth of the experience that I'm having. And now if I were to make take action from that place, thinking that was reflective of the external experience, well, I'd be wrong, wouldn't I? Like if I was to suddenly grab on to the table and imagine if I was sitting completely still. You're all in a class of mine, we're all meditating, it's been an hour, we're doing this meditation, and you're watching me, and I'm completely still, but all of a sudden I grab on to the wall like grim death, and I'm gripping, but none of me is moving. Nothing physically is moving, but I'm holding onto the wall as if I'm about to be just ripped off by a tornado. You'd think that was hopefully funny and a little bit strange, but hopefully you'd laugh. But that's that example from my experience, disoriented, orientation, disorientation, the disconnection of a context, then that's all I've got. That would be a poor place for me to take action from, especially if it's relating to something like my interaction with other human beings or some major life decisions. It's easy to see how people who find themselves just down a path in a tunnel in a particular type of neurosis, that until they get to even an ability, let alone a point, until they even have the realization that they could orient themselves to the surrounding reality, the external reality, I should say, then the only thing they have to go on is their internal world. And it makes sense how people can imagine themselves into demonic places. People can imagine themselves into places of they can create such extreme internal narrative that they then take action towards murder, or action towards great war, or action towards, even just often the way that we talk to our closest and loved ones. Are we really oriented in the context around us, or are we just really, all we have is the reference of our internal experience, and then we make the mistake of applying that externally, thinking that they are the same. And it's important that we realize that that's not necessarily always the case. And we go back to, look at this, whoa, good thing I didn't rub it off. Let's go back to this sutra. Sorry. It's getting late, it's not a sutra at all. Let's go back to the stupa. This idea that there's the physical form, jisui kafu, there's the four fundamentals, or the elements that make up the material, and they're in context to each other. Ku, the sense of self, that which is not even identity, but the experiential self, that's not directly contextualized. So there is this difference between what we now, in like a modern, it's probably pretty crappy, but a modern terminology, we coin the internal and the external. It's probably Jungian, but this idea that like there are different realms going on. It's like the micro and the macro, and they are reflective of each other, except that I think that it's possible as a human being to fall prey to living kind of only in one of them. If you're really trapped in your orientation only internally, in your internal dialogue and your internal experience of self, then your life experience is probably unbelievably emotional. And I'm just pulling this out of I'm just making assumptions out of my understanding of that. I would assume that you would be not hysterical, but like everything would be so incredibly emotionally charged, and everything would be falling in and out of this narrative in relationship to your sense of like the world that you think, the way that you think the world is outside of you from the inside world out. And conversely, if you were dwelling your orientation like only in the external context, never ever in relationship to the internal, you probably have a very emotionally bland experience, and probably you're more likely to be quite capable of just blowing things up and killing people. And it's like, it's just objects and stuff. Then it's not people and narrative, yeah. But you're probably less prone to go on massive homicidal rampages, yeah. You're probably far less at risk of forming like some kind of righteous war. You're probably just a bit boring, for want of a better. And I don't mean you as a character. I just mean your life. Your life experience is probably just quite mundane, because when you really contextualize it and orient the world around the external world, it's pretty mundane. It's when we create story out of the tangible world, or we externalize our narrative into objects. I mean, that's like anthropomorphization, or anthropomorphizing not just animals, characters, suns, deities, objects, but I even just mean personifying even the idea that certain colors on the wall will be expressive of a certain human experience. Like that's an entirely applied projection, yeah, and probably has a lot of merit, but it's a human applied projection. It's just matter and stuff. And so this is where I think philosophically the philosophy of someone like Descartes, the mechanistic universe, it marries up, but it's only half the story. That is true out there, but it's not true in here. It's not true in this. And it's not that one is correct and the other is incorrect. I think that they are mutually arising, for want of a better term. And we'll leave it at that. You have a lovely evening. Hopefully this was fun, and maybe if that was the first time you've ever experienced your heart rate on that kind of level, or realised that you even have the ability to do that, do more of it. If you like it, do more, and it will. That's how you'll progress. Have an awesome evening. Enjoy tomorrow, Friday. We've got something very special lined up. So same bat channel, same bat place. It's the Friday Philosophy and Theory Chat, 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock on Friday here on the Facebook page. Or, if you're watching this in the future on YouTube, look for the next one. Session 9 of that. Very special. I have a very special guest that I am talking to, and it will be awesomely informative. Hope you have an awesome evening. See you then. Bye.